Everybody hit that like. We're getting ready to get started. I think you can hear me. It's very exciting. We'll be back. It will be on in about a minute. Hello, Steph Heads. Share the show out. Let them know we're here. Unless, of course, you've done the notification bell because you're that trusting. And I appreciate it. I really do. Look at that. It works. The button works and we go live. Hold on one second. Let me jump straight in to, ladies and gentlemen, Rob Glenn. There he is. And he's on the phone. He's checking messages. Very busy guy. He's doing business.
I didn't know you were going to put me on.
I was going to go straight to it because we have so much to cover today. And we haven't had a real Friday Eye in a while because, you were on vacation and the world has been in a blender. And there was a little bit of a lull in AI news, largely because of the rest. It got swamped by the rest of the world. Now, of course, there's all these secondary. AI is taking in all the video from the assassination attempt and is creating a composite 3-dimensional, like Lazarus screen, something you could put on Apple Vision Pro and walk around the site and go freeze, and everybody, holds where they are, and you could see, there's the bullet, that kind of stuff. This is the first time we're going to see that. It'll take them a little while, but we will be able to see that online from somebody within the next 3 months. And if it takes longer than that, it'll be a frigging shock. But but anyways, Rob Glenn, Root Design. Hello, how are you? Last time we talked, it was more about what was the big shift that had occurred in our country and the people coming after Biden and the knives out and the blah. And now we have we've almost got a full ticket. We have a presidential candidate, and we're off into the races, and all's well, and she's raising tons of money, and so we'll all just sit here and go, everything's fine, everything's fine for a couple of weeks, as Trump and the shillbilly make their way around the country, digging the hole they're in deeper and deeper.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's more indicative of just the idea that the speed that things happen is the
quickening.
Norm now.
Yes.
Yeah, it just get used to the speed. And, like if you're driving a F1 car around a track, like it seems really fast, or, an Indy car around Indianapolis, you're like, wow, how can they drive at 200 miles an hour? But then they do, and it seems like it's going slow to them, So you just get used to the speed, and the speed is the speed. That's just what it is.
So a couple of things. I think the biggest kind of singular news is that OpenAI has released an AI search tool, and that in and of itself, like Google and all those have, Google. I don't know. You can't OpenAI it, so it's. I don't know if you're gonna Siri it or you're gonna Alexa it or so. Somebody's gonna come up with a name for that that part of it, I guess, eventually. But it is now going to be I've been trying, and I don't know, I'm curious about your experience with it as well. I've been trying to use like Copilot and those kind of things when I'm researching something. But unlike search engines, they're still in the, that's a little touchy zone. And so and I deal with so many touchy subjects because of the show that if I want to do a deep dive on whether or not JD Vance fucked a couch or what Nick Fuentes has said about JD Vance's wife, I can Google that and get relevant articles and all that kind of stuff. But Copilot, those don't want to go into it. They get really, no pun intended, gun shy about when you're trying to dig up information on an assassination attempt. Even if it's the JFK assassination, they get a little weird about it.
Well, this is sort of indicative of how the shift would happen. So when we think about search online right now, we think about it more like you go to Google, you type in a thing and you get a bunch of results and you choose what the thing you're going to click on is. And there might be, there's thousands of choices. So you kind of like filter through that and you choose the ones you want. You have more than one. But when you ask a chatbot a question, it typically just gives you a single answer. It doesn't say, well, some people say this and some people say that. And there's a pretty stark difference between those two, flows, if you will, workflows. So to me, so when we use it for coding, we use it for visualization of some concepts and things like that. That's actually the thing that we pay close attention to. For the sake of coding, let's talk about, I'd like to do this thing. Tell me, give me an example of how to do this particular thing. It'll just give you one answer. But like anything, like in writing, there's like 1,000 ways to do the same thing.
Yes.
Right? So you either choose that one and go down that path and determine whether it works or not, or you have to sort of probe it more and ask it, well, what are some other alternatives or something like that? Search is kind of that way, like it, and getting back to our interface, our user interface kind of concept, that has to be figured out by them as people who make a product and try to sell a product, and then us as users who are users of that product.
They're calling it Search GPT for obvious reasons, and it is designed to give you an answer according to their announcement. It says Search GPT will quickly and directly respond to your questions with up-to-date information from the web while giving you clear links to relevant sources. You'll be able to ask follow-up questions like you would in a conversation with a person, with a shared context building with each query. So what you'll be able to do is narrow it down by talking to it, and it'll there is a bit of a weird kind of like nerd assistant standing next to you that would read off the relevant cited things. Like that's not weird at all when you're reading it. It's weird when it's spoken. Now, people with visually impaired people are used to this. Like this is how they get a search engine because they'll have it set up so that it can be read aloud. So that will be an option that a lot of us will look at. There will also be a variation where they'll go, here's what I found, and it's kind of like this. I could go to any of the links that you want, and they'll show up on your screen, so you can look at them. So you don't have to have them read out loud to you with it. So it'll be a lot more like a trusted companion as opposed to, I did this for you, boss. I did it for you. It's all right here. See, I made a list for you, right? Which would be really annoying after a while. Yeah.
Well, they tend to be really good at summarizing information. So I'd imagine if you were think about it as a traditional Google search result, instead of just saying what the title of the page is and then maybe like a brief thing about it, a description about the page, which is actually coming from the page itself. In theory, it would start to give you, and Google does this inside of their own using Gemini. Inside of their own search engine. They sort of like say, well, here's a link and here's a summary of what that link says. So you get a bunch of summaries. Right. But what we're we're experiencing this now inside of the political realm, and that is that, like, what is, Chat GPT is capable of assuming a persona, right? So
Right.
if you take a range of people, in this case, and the fight is really over, is shortening the range, right? Like the Overton window, like, so it says, well, if you ask the question, what is JD Vance fucking a couch, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
well, these people say he is, and these people say he isn't,
Right.
and so it's got to sort of summarize a range, and now you're starting to get into Overton window stuff. Yeah, so it's doing things that, in theory, a researcher would be sort of, correlating or,
That's right.
yes, what's the word?
Well, there's a thin line also. Yeah, there's also I like a thin line between an actual research assistant and a conversational buddy that catches you up on the news. So the story itself, you know what I mean? And again, about as trustworthy as a breaking news commentator would be, because they're only talking about what they're hearing at that point, may or may not turn out to be true later on. And people rely on that from a human being on the news all the time. And this is my problem with 24-hour news cycle, is that a lot of times they've just got to keep talking and it can never stop. There will be an upside to what would be effectively an AI, let's say, looking down the line. What if you don't watch the news anymore? You don't tune in to a trusted news person anymore. You have an AI channel with a AI avatar that you like, that you tune into, that's aggregated on the best background information that's drawn from, it's got connections to the internal Telegram feed of lots of people, with permission on background to use their stuff, and it can draw from it whenever it wants to, and those kind of things. This is in the future. And so instead of going on and turning on your television and just passively watching this thing, you turn on the TV and you go, what's happening right now? And then it'll tell you a summary of things, of what's going on, and go, wait a minute, hold on, JD Vance fucked a couch? What's that about? And it'll go, well, this is where the story came from. It started out as a joke, and now it's become a meme. That he didn't actually do it. It was based on this idea that this sounds like something he would do, was the joke. But because it was fact-checked as real, people are reacting to it as such. So you need to know it's not real, but the rollover from it is real, because it points to a problem with his vice presidential status, in that there's so much ridiculous stuff in his actual memoir that this sounds completely plausible to everybody else. Yeah. And by the way, here's and you go like, well, why would they think that? Well, because here's 3 things that he has in his book that totally sound equally as bad, including the part where his grandmother asked him if he wants to suck a dick, and that kind of stuff. And so you will interact with this AI news being, instead of 8 o'clock every night, whenever you turn the screen on, because it won't be a TV anymore. It'll be the screen that you watch whatever you watch through.
Yeah, but that story is also a statement about how the news cycle or the news narrative can be manipulated.
Yes.
In this case, it was manipulated by a mass of people sort of going along with the story.
Yeah.
In other senses, like we saw with Biden's age, it was manipulated by news organizations pummeling your news feed with those things. So
that's right.
Those are 2 sort of opposite sides of a curated set of information that you're getting. And I think that a lot of people ask about AI, especially in the conversations we've had, like, is it going to be able to tell me when I'm being ripped off, or is it going to keep me from getting spam or something like that? And in the case of news, like we're talking about, that's a really interesting thing, because if it's not Google telling you, or Apple's news feed telling you what it is, that completely changes the game, right? Like it's you and your side teaching a chatbot, let's say, to curate it for you differently, and so it could be. It's almost like the opposite of news cul-de-sacs, like, in a way, which could send you in a different cul-de-sac, or it could like break us free of the problem that we're seeing right now, which is that narrative is, for whatever reason, sort of maybe both sidesing it or bringing us
Right.
to some sort of like weird middle ground that doesn't exist. Bless you.
Thank you.
um,
So here's I guess the other big thing, and we'll see how. By the way, I am on the wait list for Search GPT. So I'll let you know.
Cool. Of course you are. You're always cutting edge on that stuff.
I think one of the biggest, like, oh good, what? Huh? And yes, Andrea, we can do questions for Rob if anybody has them. If you want to grab some, that would be really cool in the Discord. And we have an AI kind of a Friday Eye Discord channel in the regular Discord for all our patrons and people who are fans of the show. And
I saw. Sorry, didn't mean to overrun you. I saw a news story about a game actors, I guess is the best way to describe them, starting to go on strike, like Actors Guild members went on strike because of AI.
Right.
And I thought that was really fascinating because games are a really interesting place. Games now are as entertaining to the people who play them as a movie. Like the experience of a game can be as much as a movie or a group of people playing together, and the sort of characters that the game is playing itself, like the AI characters. What is it? NPC, I think, non-real
NPC,
the
non-player characters.
NPC, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a gamer. My kids are, and they're probably laughing at me right now. So, anyways, inside of that game, like you can use AI to it can use AI for these characters who are not being played by another person, and those stories can basically they can take on a life of their own, and it's a type of entertainment, I guess you would say, that is like a lot of people experience that and want to have this entertainment experience.
Right.
But it's sort of not like a movie where it's like a broadcast experience. It's a very personalized experience. And I find those areas to be extremely fascinating.
Yeah. So when it comes to the NPC characters in video games, that is just gonna grow. Like there is no end in sight for that. And unless you're same thing is true of voiceover actors. Voiceover actors are screwed because you're going to be able to dial in tonality, personality, vocal quality, the level of vocal fry or lack thereof that you're going to want, all that stuff. And until such time as they pass hey, if you're using an AI generated voice, you need to put a disclaimer on it. Until that happens, voiceover actors are done. In commercials, it will be a little different in cartoons in that they will replace all the low-res voices, the ones that aren't superstars. If it isn't Brad Pitt voicing the character, they'll just use an AI voice to make it happen and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it until they get it exactly how they want it. But once we pass a law that says you've got to put that, like I was saying, that glisten, that AI glisten on a AI generated voice so people know the difference. Now this may not apply, by the way, to movies or video games because you can just put it up at the beginning. Like all voices are AI simulated. You can't have time for that in a commercial or in a chat bot or when somebody's talking to you online, in customer service or something like that. So they will have to, there will be separate categories. When it's entertainment, it's none of your goddamn business until you see the credits, technically. So they can just say AI generated on, or if they bother to put the names there at all. They only list the actors, and the other characters, they'll just put a drawing. Who cares? But that's going to happen. And the same thing with video games is that they're going to generate these voices. And once there's a good spattering of voices, which they can get from anything, especially dead people, there's enough like recorded voices of non-celebrity dead people talking over the decades in television and radio that you could train voices on that stuff endlessly, create voices based on, if it ain't Wolfman Jack, any radio DJ who's not known could have their voice used as a person. Any local weather person. I mean, there's just tons of stuff to draw from. Once that's done, you can build off that and create, combination voices where you have this voice, but I want it to sound like they were a smoker. This voice, but I want it to sound like they're older, they're younger, or whatever. Once you do that, then the voice fakes can become endless. That's gonna happen in games and animation. And in live stuff, the question is, do they have the right to change your performance after the fact? And that'll be the next big actor thing, because they can make your mouth look like you said the words and whatever. And sometimes you'll come in and you'll do what's called ADR, additional dialogue and replacement, where you'll come in and you'll either add a line or you will repeat a line there was wind on it, or there was a noise issue, or it was a sound problem, or they want a different read on it, or they used a different take, so they want to brighten it up, but they don't have another shot of you. So you come in and you stand in front of a little music stand and they put the piece of video up there and you try your best to match what you say to the screen, to the mouth movements. Adobe already has an AI thing that takes whatever you say and matches the mouth movement. They already have that. So ADR is now, I did endless ADR. You want to go see an example of perfect ADR, go watch the Michael episode where he sings Ben to Ben in Queer as Folk. Because we moved into this warehouse, there was lead and like particulate dust everywhere because it was a factory. It was steel, not lead. But I got a sore throat. Everybody was having respiratory issues until they cleaned the place out. And so I lost my voice for about 48 hours. I couldn't speak at all. I couldn't even squeak out noise. It was just nothing came out. It was terrifying. But I mouthed all my lines. And then I had to go, because we were still filming, and I had already shot in that place, but nobody else had. So everybody else came in after they'd cleaned it up, and they were fine. But I couldn't speak. So I had to mouth my lines. And then I went into a booth, and I sang the song and did all the lines in that scene after the fact. And if you watch it, you can't tell the difference. You're welcome, because I'm a pro. But now you don't even have to worry about that. Like, I could come in there and throw in whatever inflection I want, and they could change literally how my lips move on it. It's nuts. So I don't know that they have much a leg to stand on.
Yeah, the special effects have always been that good, and AI just accelerates that.
Yes.
Or the use of generative AI. Inside of games, though, it's way more than just voices. It's the actual gameplay of the person you're going up against.
Yes.
It's the interactions between you and as a bot, let's call it, learns off of your movement, it can effectively come against you or play against you in different ways. So it's pretty insanely a big world. And I think, games is a huge industry, and it's sort of off the radar for people who don't play them, but it's where a lot of our kids live a decent amount of their lives, right? So I think it's really important to just sort of be cognizant of what's going on inside of those things, and those experiences are already quite intense and immersive, and they're only going to get more immersive. But inside of
what's up, guys? So welcome back to
I think that inside of those experiences, we're starting to kind of think about the manipulation side of the information a lot more directly. I think, especially in politics, it's becoming true. We saw the manipulation of it in a really confined set of time. And it's become so obvious.
Right.
These tools are both making that speed up, and it's going to create the ability to understand that it's happening better and faster.
Yeah. There's let's see if I can bring this up without it. Yeah, hold on. So there's this is a video on YouTube. This is from 11 months ago. This is even new. But this is a dude went into Unreal designed games and tried to convince AI characters that they are living in a simulation. Because you can talk to them in this Unreal game. And so they operate off of ChatGPT kind of related reference, and they will build on storyline. There were some very scary kind of early stories, not unlike the kind of, Google's AI becoming racist in the early days, in these Unreal Engine character stories before they all just decided to sign up for a safer AI. Which, by the way, will still go very far down the road of thinking it's operating as real. But because it's a game and a character in a game, it is sort of less able to have that guardrail on it because it's playing a character specifically for your enjoyment. That it has already been trained. Hey, don't say you're an AI. Say you're this. So this guy was just trying to dig around and see what it would take to get him, to get these characters to realize that they are trapped in a sim, essentially. Yeah. And insofar as I know, none of them did. None of them could grasp it. As I
Maybe
guess
because it wasn't trained into them.
That's right.
The training model didn't even look at
there's
that.
a line they can't cross in understanding because they're designed for that, right?
Right.
So
yeah. So really, I think that we have to elect people that are going to think about this in these terms. But I think that if you solve the fundamentals, and that's what we talk about a lot, like if you solve for the simple fundamentals, you're going to solve for the things that are broken now already, I think.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, like when we talk about putting a fry on a voice, as you say, that's the same type of law that should be already in place for bots on social media.
Yes, agreed.
If it's not real, it should be tagged. It should either not be there or it should be tagged. And that's like a very obvious thing to most people.
Right.
So why isn't that in place yet? So I think if you're scared about what AI is going to be, think about what we already have and try to solve the issues that we already have, because the issues now are the same as AI is going to basically just speed up.
Absolutely.
So that's like, almost think about the world of AI right now, or at least the sort of talk around it, as being like a great way for us to see what's already wrong.
Yeah.
And we weren't paying attention to it before.
Right. And we have laws against when people do it. But we don't, and again, let's say it's fraud when you call up an old person and tell them that they're, somebody's got a hold of their social security number and and they're buying things with their money. So we need to check that. So can you confirm your social security number for me? Okay. That's illegal whether you do it in a crowded mall, walk right up to them, or if you do it using a phone, right? The phone is a transfer system for your voice to their ear and their voice to your ear, and that doesn't make it less illegal because you're using a piece of technology between you and them. The same thing is true as if you use AI for this purpose. If you're faking a personality or faking a voice or faking the existence of another human being, there's no difference than pretending to be somebody on the other line just because it's automated. So that law, that fraud law, should already cover it. And at some point, one of two things is going to happen. The Congress is going to institute a law, and the social media companies are going to flip out for about 9 minutes, because mostly X, because that's where, he is using he was going to purge the bots, and then he realized if you purge the bots, nobody's on this goddamn thing anymore. And how am I going to sell advertising if they don't think the club is crowded? So the bots are the people. Think of this. You ever gone to a club in New York City where you go there and there's a line down the block of people waiting to get in the club? And you have you're somebody like me, or somebody like me, and they're like, I can get you in. And you both go in and the place is fucking empty. There's a line down the block, but the club is empty. Okay? The line down the block is to make people want to come to the club, so that they line up, and by the time they go, wait a minute, this place is empty, they stood in line already, so they go and have a drink. They're like, I'm already here, and we stood in line, so maybe it'll get better. And so you fill your club that way, right? You solve the birthday party, is anybody going to show up problem that way. You make everybody line up. So those are bots. Those X is the almost the entire population of Twitter, what formerly known as Twitter and now called Shitter, is a line outside a club. That's what it is. It's just and those are all bots. And if you get rid of them, you go, nobody's in the fucking club. Get out of here. And they leave. Nobody's going to come in, period, because why would you? Because the place is empty and you're there to socialize. It's social media. So he just realized that and kept them all and then doubled down. Once you go, okay, we need a sign. You got to put a sign out front that says, there is no one in here. There's a line out front, but the club is empty. If you have to put a sign up that says that, you would kill the business at 80% of the clubs in most cities because nobody would stand in line to go there. They'd all go to the restaurant next door and start actually socializing.
Yeah, worse than that, in true like new Donald Trump era, Musk basically complained about how many bots Twitter had before he bought it, trying to get the price down.
That's
and
exactly
it didn't
right.
work. And then he got there and he like made it worse.
Yeah, because that's he's and I guess all of his talk about it didn't really solve it. And we'll get to the AI news about Elon Musk here in just 1 second too, because he is using Grok to train or using your tweets. If you're on Shitter, he uses what you write to train his AI. And you can opt out of that. There's a way to opt out of having your stuff used. But
I think about when the concept that we were just talking about, if you apply it to the generation of art, or as you were saying, like voiceovers or video or stuff like that, the issues there, unlike social media, which is bots, the issues there, I think, are that we're undervaluing creative work. We're undervaluing the creative work of individual people. And that has been happening for a long time, probably 40 years, ever since, we started shipping stuff over to China. Or ever since technology started to sort of be able to enhance the voiceover, the video, stuff like that.
Right.
Special effects, the creation of special effects used to be a huge industry where there was some big money people being able to make money in that industry. And now that's even kind of become a commodity in many ways. It's really hard to make money doing special effects. We've got all kinds of people that talk about art and creating art in our chat here that complain that it's hard to make money. So the problem with that is not this AI. Well, AI has issues with it. My point, though, is that if you solve the issue of putting value on the art, like creating a value for it, or creating a structure by which individuals can get paid for the use of their art in a way which is kind of not really working right now, then again, you solve for the AI, which is augmenting the human creation. So I keep coming back to that idea of like, take the problem that we see the acceleration causing and look at what we have now and try to fix actually what we have now. And my biggest worry actually is that a bunch of people are going to get in, when everybody's kind of attention starts to go on the actual creation of laws, that the laws are going to be built from the standpoint of people worried that Terminator is going to kill them, and not what the actual problem is. Yes, absolutely. Because again, don't bring a fire extinguisher to a flood. Right. There are so many people that do this because they are so almost teed up for what the problem will obviously be to everyone. And the reason it's obvious to everyone is because that's the only thing we've seen out of Hollywood. We've only seen this version of things. And the reality is a lot more insidious, right? Because let me tell you something. More people are going to die because of poorly designed AI in self-driving cars than will be shot by robots with bullets. Absolutely. Just period. Let's just, even if we have
robots that kill on the battlefield, and one gets loose in a city, but even in that particular case, the number of people who will be killed over time by people in poorly designed, or out of control AI in self-driving cars will be way past that number by the time they work out the kinks. It already is. So right. A couple of questions, but I do want to address what you were saying about like sending stuff to China and why it's this is one of the areas where, even though I think China would want it, to be able to steal this technology, it goes against the actual governmental function of China. So they're really in a weirdly trapped zone. And this is an article on Axios. Censorship is slowing AI progress in China. And we've talked a little bit about this before, Rob. But that, one of the things that makes AI useful is how much it has access to real information and how reliable its responses are. And if you have government sitting there going, whoa, 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 don't tell them that about something that's true. We're not talking about something like don't make art out of Nazi symbols. That's a different zone of things. And that's companies deciding they don't want to be on the side of the Nazis. That's totally fine. But the government ultimately won't put a stop on that part of it. They might say you can't change American flags into them and then pretend that really happened, right? You can't do that. That's illegal because that would be fraud or something like that. But China is specifically, here, I'll show you there. The Chinese government is cracking down on AI. This is from Business Insider, but Beijing appears to be demanding that Chinese AI models have socialist values. Now, again, when some people are like, oh, that's good. No, because it's socialism with Chinese characteristics. It's this BS version of it's the kind of socialism that killed 50 million people under Mao. It's not the kind where like, oh, good, we're going to share. Like, it's not social security. It's social credit score. There's a difference. And China's government appears to be extending its AI crackdown. The CCP is requiring tech companies to submit AI models for review. The intense scrutiny could slow China's AI development and commercialization. You think? And the only thing that it's not going to do this is when they use it to attack other countries. They will just absorb it, like the U.S. Will sometimes like hire a hacker that's really good after they broke into the Pentagon or something. They're going to do that with AI. Like, okay, now you're so good at this, go attack them. That's the only area where it's going to be off the leash. But internally in the country, as far as helping business, helping science, any of that stuff, it's going to be, completely clamped down. And it is.
Well, it's inherently unuseful if right. used in the way that they would use it, or right. they not that they would use it. They currently look at the world or look at the internet in the sense that they want to limit the amount that people see because they want to somehow control what their opinion of the thing is. Right. So right. if they don't show alternative views, let's say, of the world, they want to do that to keep everybody sort of along a certain track that they want. AI is its main advantage is that it can take huge amounts of information and it can sort of summarize it. Yeah. And then also another really awesome thing about it is you can sort of take that large, I call it the world, and you can sort of tell it only focus on this subset and talk to me as if you're that subset. Yeah. Well, effectively, that's what China's doing. They couldn't develop AI in their own country because they are only the subset. They're not right. the whole world. Right. So you have to go train it right. on the whole world.
That's right. It's brilliant. If you wanted to, if you like socialist values and the like, or you want to know what it would be like to have a sit-down conversation with Karl Marx, you can set up a chat GPT that studies all that stuff and only talks like that. The only sort of regurgitates the ideology of that and can factor all the other information it takes in through that lens. You can make that. But you can also make a lens that is Keynesian. You can also make a lens that's, that's free trade psychopath, that comes from the character of in American Psycho. You know what I mean? You could do all of those things. And then you get, if diversity is our strength, a kind of diverse, you could have a diverse conversation that's kind of in its purest, most psychotic form. China, like you said, is only the subset of one of those, right? Is only it's saying we're going to exclude all other opinion and ideas that even if we're wrong, you can't go outside these training wheels. Yeah, it's Patrick Bateman. It's just like his record reviews from Patrick Bateman.
Yeah, so like innovation, first of all, innovation in China is very difficult to accomplish no matter how you look at it. But innovation in AI just doesn't seem possible unless China is developing AI by stealing everybody else's information, which I guess they probably are because that's what they do, right? But my point to bring up China was more about the idea of this like, if you want to think about a culture that thinks that the path forward is not to create a unique version of that because, you know, your starting point is that you want to be new and unique and you don't want to take from somebody else. That's not their starting point.
Yeah, you can't. It's illegal. It's not even like they prefer not to do it. It's against the law. Yeah. What a weird way to live, but that's what they are.
But here, you know, we're a marketing executive at a large corporation, and you don't have any budget, and you want to make a video or an advertisement on YouTube, then that you're going to start to use AI to create that because you either don't want to go hire a person or you don't have the money to, and however that happened, it happened. My point is simply, it's changing that value proposition that we need to do. We need to make sure that at those points, either as consumers, we reject AI generated content, or it's marked, as you say, and then we can choose whether we watch it or not, or we sort of incentivize it to not be used and direct people to use non-AI generated content because it's good for jobs, as a for instance. So these are like really deep infrastructural level. I hope I said that word right.
Infrastructural
level.
Infrastructural. Yeah, sure, that works for me.
Right. So like, you know, if we're training, you know, young new people or people coming into the workforce to do HVAC jobs as opposed to all like pointing them to be CEOs, this sort of at that level, that job training level, that we need to think about things, and we need to elevate the creation of things to a level that has value. And I don't know if that happens in regulation, if it happens just in us as consumers.
Right.
But, you know, if you look at the last few weeks, you know, the downfall of the New York Times might be people just sick of them being the New York Times, and they stop looking at it because they don't believe it anymore. Or they just are fed up with how they're spinning a story, right? So it could also be in us to alter the use of these technologies to the place that we want them to be used simply by consuming them in that way, right? So we're getting kind of really big picture on that, but
it's important. Like I'll give you an example of why that kind of works as a concept. Hold on, let me see if I can find. Well, this is I just showed you the whole censorship is slowing China's AI, right? That was in Axios yesterday. Okay. Speaking of the New York Times, what's the New York Times posting? China is closing the AI gap with the United States. In recent weeks, Chinese tech companies have unveiled technologies that rival American systems, and they're already in the hands of consumers and software developers. This is just bullshit.
Yeah, there's this huge army of people, this 1 billion person country. They all want to take your jobs, and they're coming for you.
Right, and they're going to get it because magic. Because it's because look at this video prompt. Now, let me tell you something. One of the things we know about specifically the sort of the Chinese market. I won't even say the Chinese people, because we haven't been able to see what the Chinese people are totally capable of since the CCP has been in charge. It's really fucking sad. But what you're seeing here is their ripoff of other generative AIs. They're just cribbing the growth of AI from, as far as faking video and that kind of stuff. We've seen this kind of video everywhere else, better, I would say, with less bleeding, with less tearing, with less, morphing and stuff, especially on the pro level. And this is just lifted from that. Like China's been caught, like, I want to say, I've seen 6 articles about it very specifically, but dozens of times simply going onto ChatGPT, making something and going, our new AI made this. You're like, no, it didn't. You made a portal that translates Chinese to English and English back to Chinese that uses ChatGPT before ChatGPT did that itself. And you used their technology to make stuff and pretend it came from your AI. It's just ridiculous. And then you've got like Megan Tobin is in Shanghai, and this guy Kade Metz or whatever is in San Francisco, writing this article together, and both of them are just full of shit. Like, we've seen this kind of stuff all over the place, and it's all borrowed from the same models, all that kind of stuff. And they're like, look, ours is so much quicker than yours, and all that stuff. And they're like, okay, show me the thing that's not a copycat, and I'll show you the fact that they cannot innovate past a certain point. They're not allowed to. That's the weird part. You can generate on American and European AIs, for example, right now, shit, even on the Russian ones that they've been playing around with, you can make up stuff from whole cloth. In China, almost everything is a copy of something you've seen just before, like the man walking on the moon, like the Mona Lisa. It has to be born off something that is already accepted and has been vetted by by a human being saying, okay, that picture's okay. Right? It's super odd. And yet they, and by the way, I like how when she first parts the glass up, besides the fact that her fingertips are like evil witch fingertips, watch the fold on the fingers when she brings her glasses out of nowhere down here in this part. They just kind of like blend out of your hands. It's, this happens with AI all over the place. That's how we know what model it was based on. You can see this same problem.
The mistakes, essentially. Yeah.
It's just so weird.
You want to answer a couple questions?
Yeah. So Jerry was asking, can you please ask Alan Rob, well, if AI will be used to make it look like you are lying, telling an untruth, would there be anything you can do about it?
Well, okay. I'm going to answer this in a really weird way, but going back to the search GPT, when we search for something, usually we just want the right answer, right? What's the right answer? And as we learn more and more about the way things are, what is the right answer? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But when it gives you an answer, it just gives you one answer. So you think it's right.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you, so the model for like trying to decide how we force AI chatbots to tell us the truth, it has to again flow through what is the truth. And we're struggling now with even these huge institutions being able to filter for us what the truth actually is. Right. So in theory, yes, absolutely. AI, a chatbot should be able to tell you the quote unquote truth, but it's almost always going to have some sort of caveat to it, right? Just like the couch story, right? Like, so did he do it? Well, you stated the truth. Like, it started with a guy on X.
Yep.
He specifically said it was said in 3 pages or something. People took that, it went viral. So the story is the story.
Right.
And so it becomes truth, just like everything Trump repeats on over and over and over, just becomes the truth for people. So in many ways, AI, it's even Google's search. It tends to put things at the top that have the most links or the most something,
Right.
the most likes on X or whatever. There's some sort of criteria which is filtering those things or putting them in an order. And anytime you know what the criteria is, it means you can game it.
Yeah.
So you can push stuff up using
right with
techniques,
the with the SEO stuff, and a great example of that in use is this dude. Okay, this is a guy named John Mark Dugan. John Mark Dugan is a Florida police officer, former retired Florida police officer, who now lives in Moscow of all places, and he has 150 fake news sites that look like local news places, like the Chicago Reader kind of stuff. And they look for all the world, if you saw them online, like a local indie news rag, right? With, barrel edition stories that he cribs from other things, and then fake AI stories meant to drive a narrative on behalf of Russia. So according to a research report published by NewsGuard, he owns sites like DC Weekly, New York News Daily instead of the Daily News, Boston Times. He owns a one that has a Chicago name. He's all over the place, right? So, and he denies any involvement, even though he owns them and they can track him. He just said never heard of them and hung up. He fled his home in Florida in 2016 to evade criminal charges related to a massive doxing campaign he was accused of launching against public officials, and was given asylum by the Russian government. And he posed as a journalist in the Donbass region, testifying at Russian public hearings. He's not a journalist. He was there literally as a fake. He was just lying on the stand. And he's on Russian state TV. But he owns 150 fake AI news rags with these bullshit names. So when you see something that looks like because we on our side of the aisle tend to trust the local indie news stuff to the point where we want to support them. So what this guy did was decide to weaponize that directly. So I'm going to create not just bullshit copies of ABC News, but the Albuquerque Reader, so that people in Albuquerque think somebody locally lives here and is trying their best to put out real news that's around me, right? That aggregates, big news that's on, from other sites through the AP, but then locally will tell me what's going on. And because we care about that stuff, so they're weaponizing make your opponent's strength a weakness, and our care for local news is being weaponized by this dickhead. So it's an example of that. Now, I wanted to show this real quick too, and relate.
Can I pause for a second? So in that story, that was sort of more like a HuffPost approach. It was like a news aggregate thing
Barrel
that he
edition.
was running, and then he was pushing stories in from these things that looked real. So you say, how do you deal with that? Well, if we go back to, and I'm in Chicago in Illinois, and in the Rauner administration, there was this push by Republicans in Illinois who had one of the people owned a bulk mail company, and they would start making bulk mail flyers that looked like the Chicago Reader. They looked like newspapers, and they would just make up names. It would be like the Independent Times. Actually, the Epic Times was sent out in this same way, which we all know through Steve Bannon. Anyway, and then they would put these ridiculously stupid headlines on the first thing, I don't remember his enemies. We've gone so far past Rauner, but Madigan is a Illinois politician that everybody loves to hate. So Madigan is killing your children. It would be some wacky thing, and they would just bulk mail it to everybody, and you'd get it, and it would look like a real newspaper, like the Reader, the Chicago Reader. So that was I'll call it the snail mail way to do it. And then all he did is he just used the same concept, and he did it through a HuffPost style news aggregate, right? So it's to my first point, which is correct the first problem, which is it shouldn't be legal to send out fake news stories that are that ridiculously wrong.
Yeah.
But once you start, then you just have to deal with that, because what about satire? What about The Onion? Does that fall under that same thing? So,
How
it
big
gets
does
really
the
hard.
text on the page that says it's satire have to be? Where's the legalese at the bottom of the page
Right.
that says not available in all states? Don't drink this if you're allergic to poison ivy. Whatever, that kind of shit that you always see on ads and the like. Right.
Well, when it's a drug, the whole commercial has this huge end thing that says you're gonna, some people might experience, the anal bleeding is my favorite.
Yes, right.
It's always some.
Do I get to flip a coin? How does that? You're right. By the way, this is from that. I'm always talking about the buts on articles. This is from the same New York Times article that says the Chinese are catching up. The Chinese companies are good at replicating and improving what the U.S. already has, says Yiren Chen, a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Duke University. They are not as good at inventing something completely new that will bypass the U.S. in 5 to 10 years. Exactly. That's the but. All you are seeing from these, from the rest of this article is, oh my God, look how well they copied what was already done. And in most cases, they're not even copying it. They're simply using it. They're using Gemini. They're using Claude. They're using ChatGPT to make these things. And it's hilarious how I don't know why certain reporters keep falling for this shit. Unless it, and that's me not espousing nefarious, Yeah.
And, some of the pushback is just like the couch story, where it's like people who are trying to do it in the opposite way to counteract the problem. Right.
Right.
So that's, like one way to cure spam is to just get rid of everything and not look at anything. So I don't know, super PACs is another thing. So, Republicans were like way ahead on super PACs. So the Democrats were like, well, should we not use super PACs? No, they have dark money.
You're going to have to.
Yeah, we have money that good people are trying to spend in the same way and use the same rules, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like our thing on AI is you have to use it and use it in a moral way.
It was a great example of that is, and by the way, there I know Phil's going to be here in a minute, and we didn't get to all the questions. Sure. 56 Nick Ridge said, "Is there a place for AI couch jokes?" Already happening.
All of the couch stuff is probably generated by AI.
Yes,
just so you know.
For the guys, will artificial entertainment become mainstream? It already is, because that's what NPCs are in video games. Video game characters, bots, and what you play against and stuff is already there. It's only a matter of time when it translates over to other stuff. Will it replace everything? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, it might even invigorate live theater in a way we've never seen, since television, right? Because television and film took away the prevalence of live theater across the country. It was the norm. Think of any saloon show. Think of in Blazing Saddles, you know what I mean, where they would go down to the saloon and see a live show. That's because there was no TV and movies. So once TV and movies gets taken over by stuff, and you're like, yeah, this is cool and I'm enjoying it, but I have no connection. I don't even know if this person's real. Going to see someone live will be a huge deal, right? Until Westworld, I guess. But And then ask Hal and Rob to check out University of Kentucky Professor Seals, who used AI to unroll ancient scrolls. It's really fucking cool. Well, funny you should mention that, because my mother would disown me if I didn't bring up the fact that that's exactly what this story is about. UK and a half, AI reads text from 2,000-year-old Herculaneum scrolls. Apparently they were so damaged that everybody said they were unreadable, and you couldn't unroll them without destroying them, but it was able to, go through all the different levels of what ink versus burnt paper versus damage and all that kind of stuff, and unroll this thing at University of Kentucky.
I haven't read it, but did they do it without unrolling them?
Yeah, virtual unwrapping was born from a vision that I had, where we might be able to explore the interior of something without ever having to physically open it, because that was always the danger when you would do this. You expose it to the air. Hi, Phil. I think you hear us okay in the background, and we'll get to you in just 1 second. There you go. Hi. And so Seals and his team built a revolutionary computer program, the Volume Cartographer, for locating and mapping 2D surfaces within a 3D object. And the software pipeline is used with microCT to generate extremely high resolution images, enabling the ability to read a document without ever needing to physically open it. Never mind the spyware, and immediately he was disappeared and taken to Area 51. Right.
Right.
but yeah, it was burned and carbonized by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 Christ epoch. They've been deemed unreadable, and they've been sitting for 2,000 years until now. Now AI and the ability to design software from a team, by the way, that's not their specialty. They might have wanted something like this, but they would have needed an army of people that Microsoft would have hired away from them to do this kind of stuff. And voila, now this is available to them. And get ready, for... I suppose we're going to see a bunch of YouTube videos where people are now building a religion based on what's on these scrolls and interpreting them and giving readings based on your astrological signs and the Mount Vesuvius scrolls, and it's going to happen. So
yeah, why not?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks so much, Rob. Yeah, Phil's here, and we will get to him in just 1 second. And I want to thank you for coming on, and I look forward to I'll see you next week, but also in a couple of weeks I'll be in Chicago in about a little under a month. We'll be in Chicago. I'm going to do my show from your office because I can trust the internet, and I'll be so happy. Even though I could do it from the station there in Chicago, I'm actually going to do it there just because.
That's fine. You're good.
Yeah, and the live stream.
If the station goes down, at least you can do YouTube here.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I'll do my YouTube shows from your place, and I'll do radio from there, but we'll bring Johnny Million in for a live stream of the regular show or something like that. So thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob Glenn, and thank you for walking us through some of this stuff, because we're going to see so much of this, especially in this and the next cycle. The midterms of the next presidency are going to be the thing that are most impacted by AI, because they're just getting a grip on what works and what doesn't. They're going to throw spaghetti against the wall this time. It's just going to be a fucking chaos. But by the next one, they're going to have systems in place.
Absolutely. Part of the genius of Harris's timing is that there's not enough time to do that stuff to her, right? There's not enough time to Hillary Clinton email her. So there's the chaos is a feature in this case. We want there to be couch stories and crazy memes of Harris and coconut trees, and just let it be. It's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. All right. So thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you soon.
Great. Bye.
All right. Cheers.
Bye, chat.
Bye. There he goes, and he's turned into Philip for a split second, and I will open this up and I will pop in Phil's thing, and 3, 2, 1. It should take us a second, but then we go, and there he is. Look at that. Hey, Phil, how are you?
Hey.
Welcome.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. You hear me okay?
Yep. Hear you great. Yeah. Checking stuff. Okay.
All right, great.
Just kissing at my girl. 1 second, it happens.
Sure.
Lots to cover today. Not the least of which is,
Well, yeah. We have not spoken since last Sunday. The last time we spoke was on the last week's Saturday show. So obviously, we haven't talked about.
It's been 10 years.
The biggest news in the world.
It's been a decade.
Yeah, really. I know.
And
I feel you.
And so, give us catch us up from how things are landing on your side, and then I'll incorporate what we all have been drinking from the fire hose of news. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, before I start talking about Ukraine's reaction to all of this, as a San Franciscan, I'm very familiar with Kamala Harris, and I know people who know her and who have worked with her in the past. And I reached out to them and said, well, you must be thrilled. Because in particular, one person I know who worked directly with her as a liaison for another government organ And I don't want to dox her, so I'm going to be careful about what I say exactly. But she knew Kamal and worked with her for many, 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 many years in San Francisco, the Bay Area, California, and she raves about her. She raves about her. So this is obviously, great news for her, and it's nice to hear that, people who interact with her directly have such high regard for her. And then, and then you see, all the freaking out of the tankies and the Russians. The Russians went absolutely ballistic. I mean, they started calling her a demon woman and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Sure. Well, you can tell how desperate Trump is.
They don't like it.
Because he's literally just falling back to, she's crazy. She's crazy. She's crazy. She's laughing all the time. She's crazy. That's how you know he just has no idea how to do the attack. They don't know. There's no sort of bullshit background. If she brings on Mark Kelly, which I hope she does, border state senator, can be replaced by a
and I love the idea of an astronaut.
Yeah.
Looking forward, looking to the future.
Yes, and great with systems. Gabby's his wife. She would have a prominence. She would always, people would be, aware of, her story again in a way that they may have forgotten about. I just dig it. Like whoever, she's going to pick somebody good. That's not my worry. But I really do feel like he's the shit. That's going to scare the living fuck out of them too, because she's a prosecutor. Yeah. He's the son of police officers. They're not, and neither one of them has any baggage the Russians can go after. None.
No. And there's a couple of things about that as well. One, I agree with you. I'd love to see Kelly on the ticket. Not least of which, as a single issue voter, which Ukraine for me is the single issue. I will cast my ballot on that single issue. So, I mean, obviously, who I'm going to vote for. I mean, that should never have been in question anyhow. But, he's been here twice, at least twice, Mark Kelly. He's been on senatorial delegations that I know of at least 2 times that he has physically come here and taken the risk because it's still risky coming to Ukraine. And he came here twice and is a very vocal supporter of Ukraine. So yes, if she puts him on the ticket, my vote goes to her regardless.
Yeah.
But that'll cinch it for me. And then also the idea, Trump loves this tactic where he goes in and says, "Can you imagine her, in a room with Putin or Xi?" And I'm like, yeah. Actually, I can 100%, not only because she will be the president of the United States imbued with enormous power, but because Putin is scared of strong women. Yeah. He and Trump are cut from the same cloth in that kind of arena where, much less a woman of color, he will be massively intimidated by her.
Yeah.
He was always intimidated by Hillary. I mean, one of the reasons he went after Hillary
because the manipulation point, he knows what the manipulation point is for the men around him because, again, he seeks those kinds of men out. I mean, the entire plot to kind of grow Trump as an asset over the years came out of this idea is I know that fucking guy. He hangs out with Jeffrey Epstein. I know what switches to flip. Same thing with Scott Ritter. Same thing with Snowden. Same thing with, any of these assholes. He can pick them, right? And then you just, you line them up like 10 pins. And so Sorry, I forgot to pour my Fresca before we started. I understand. No, it's necessary.
My Ukrainian Fresca?
Sure. How about a Fresca? Huh?
Aging myself. I'm aging myself there.
Since we're talking about Trump, a guy who makes Smales look like a great golfer and a good man.
But Trump and Putin. Okay, setting aside Trump for the moment because I'm sure you've had enough discussions domestically about Trump. I'm happy to pile on, but there's another aspect to it, in an area where I can lend my expertise, and that is this: Putin is a massive misogynist. Okay, he hates women. He beats them. It is well known that he
Right.
he is physically
Abusive,
violent
yeah.
towards women. He put a ballerina, was she a ballerina or a gymnast? I forget, but his like, mistress
Right.
beat her so bad that she miscarried and had to be taken in the middle of the night to a Sochi hospital. He hates women. He can't
Yeah.
stand women. So anything that Putin doesn't like, I'm all for it. So let's get
Right.
Kamala in
And-
there
and-
and
yeah.
and also the fact that she's a prosecutor. That he's not going to like that either, because a strong woman who can bring an argument to the fore
Right.
is not going to be welcomed by Vladimir Putin, and I'm good with that. I'm
Yeah.
so I'm all for it. I'm ecstatic. I was sad. You and I were on the same page with Biden.
Yeah.
And it's such a profound sacrifice that I hope they do incorporate, at least to a certain degree during the campaign. Like, let's do this for Joe. Let's Joe was
already
dignified enough.
happening, and he's going to be a major
Yeah, I'm
part of
sure.
the DNC. He'll be, there's no
Of
question that that's going to be there. The man has, in this again, because he didn't drop out because they were holding a gun to his head. Like, we'll cut your funding. Where the billionaire class and the elites, not that crowd, saying we won't donate to you. He was like, fuck you. But once they started saying, we're not going to donate down ticket to other Dems, we're not going to give the Democratic Party any money until you do.
Yeah.
Which would, just is evil. That's when he was like, all right, I'm going to do it for country. And that canonizes him as far as I'm concerned. So like, yeah, anyways, don't get me started. That said,
Yeah.
she's great,
yeah.
and the ticket will be strong, and Trump is freaking out again in the same way that Putin is, because they don't have any idea how to campaign against this, and she is rock solid in her support of Ukraine. The good part,
Yes, she
I
is.
think, the easiest thing about, and there's a reason why, as a politician, it should be a no-brainer to come to Ukraine's side in this, is because there's a lot of gray area and murkiness in the Israeli-Palestinian, the Israeli-Gaza conflict, right? Specifically.
Yes.
There's a lot of just awful history back and forth. There's, no matter who you're talking to or on behalf of, you are going to alienate a group of people because there's so much ugly to go around,
Yes.
right?
It's very polarizing.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. But in the case of Ukraine, there is none. It could not be more cut and dry. And when you have Republicans, deciding for God knows why, other than money and sort of religious like lunacy, have tried to water down the attacks on Russia, or even openly support them, or say that they deserve to win, or it's their actual territory, or, that, like Trump has said.
They were forced to invade a sovereign neighbor.
Yeah, sure. That's what he said. Meanwhile, this is the current numbers.
Now
go ahead.
the current number, yes, more dead. The Ukrainian reaction, before we move on to some of these other stories of the week kind of thing, has been very cautious, because what I have seen from Ukrainian leaders, in particular politicians, notably the politician I interviewed recently, Kira Rudik, but others as well. They're being very, very cautious, because they still, if there is a chance that Trump still pulls this out, they don't want to aggravate him. So what I have seen Ukrainians doing is saying more like, "Thank you, Joe." So looking backwards, looking to, thanks for what you did for us,
right.
Joe Biden, that sort of thing, without treading into domestic American politics by saying, now let's have Kamala. We're afraid if Trump comes in, he's a Putin stooge, we don't want him. I mean, I hear that all the time, but they're not going to weigh in because, it's a domestic American issue.
And they shouldn't be seen doing it anyways. They have just reverted to the norm. That said, it's clear that they're hoping for it in that regard. And the weird part is Trump had that phone call with Zelensky, and everybody, was worried that he would sort of pressure Zelensky. But I also don't think, Trump being the paranoid asshole that he is, there's just no fucking way that call wasn't recorded. 6 ways to Sunday.
Yeah. So and also, this article in the New York Times about like Trump has this peace plan idea and all, this, that. I wouldn't trust him any more than I could throw him underhand.
Seriously.
I mean, he is, look, Trump is compromised by Moscow. There's no two ways around that. One way or the other, they've got his little tiny balls in a vice. And they will squeeze and squeeze. And he can say whatever he wants on the phone to Zelensky. We all know how he feels about Zelensky and about Ukraine. So, and then add to that into that equation as well is his vice president. His vice presidential candidate in J.D. Vance. Look, Vance lost any kind of any respect I might have had for him, which wasn't because I don't really care about J.D. Vance, but months and months ago during what's called an annual meeting in Munich happens. We call it the Munich Security Conference. And Zelensky was there and Vance was there as a part of a U.S. delegation. Zelensky gave out an open invitation for anybody on that delegation to come and speak to him. To my knowledge, everybody did except for Vance. I'm 99%, but certainly Vance didn't. I don't know if anybody else didn't as well, but I know Vance didn't. And when he was asked why, he said, I already know everything I need to know about the war in Ukraine. I don't need to go talk to Zelensky. Right. And I just went, go fuck yourself, man. Yeah. What a stupid, narrow, myopic view on international relations. No, he didn't go meet Zelensky because he's all for chucking Ukraine under the boat or under the bus when it comes to Moscow. So no. I would not that I would vote for Trump if he had a different VP candidate, but that just cinched it for me. It's like,
that's
the second he put
who that
Vance
also
on,
cinched it.
Nope.
Who that also cinched it for was Haley voters. Beyond the fact you amongst Haley voters, you clearly have people who are disgusted by Donald Trump as a human being. He's an adjudicated rapist and a pussy-grabbing scumbag, and he's a failed businessman, and it's horseshit, right? He's just gross. But then, they have a national... These aren't, the Haley voters and a big portion of what he would call rhinos, but the Republicans who've been at this for a very long time, are certainly not isolationists. I think most of us think that they are interventionists more than we would like them to be. They might overcorrect that direction, but they sure as fuck aren't for pulling America out of every area in the world, including our UN peacekeeping obligations, right? But he is, and so the Haley voters are like, nah, no fucking way, and
that makes sense.
Yeah. And in this, the addition of J.D. Vance as being yet another Russian stooge attached to this has just sent up so many red flags. There's just this, it's enraging to them.
It really is. I cannot wait. We'll all of us who have a ballot to cast, who are Americans, I can't wait to cast my ballot. We will fight all the way to the finish line, never taking our foot off the gas.
Yep.
But once we win, and we're gonna win, man, we're gonna. Trump is such a flawed candidate.
Yeah.
I think anybody. I think part of the reason why this whole kerfuffle happened in the DNC, frankly, was because they knew that whoever they put up against Trump,
it blew no matter who was going to win this time. So they felt safe.
Right, exactly.
You could fuck around all the time because you're not going to find out because he is so bad. Yeah, agreed.
He's so bad.
And the internal polling,
when it really comes down
has
to
said
it,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. When the rubber meets the road, when it really gets Yeah, he's a terrible candidate for
Yes.
the Republican. So great. So we win in November. We have a new administration that comes in with Kamala and whoever she picks, and then we kick the shit out of the Russians. We win this war, however that looks like at the end. Whatever it is, but unquestionable that we continue our support for Ukraine, which means Putin and Moscow are fucked.
Yeah.
And also, in addition to that, I sincerely hope, and we've talked about this in the past, but I'll mention it again. I hope we have a postmortem.
Yeah.
On exactly that, not like the Mueller report. I want a proper postmortem about what Russia has been doing in our body politic, and namely with Trump for the last, decade.
Yeah.
Since 2015, 2016. It has to happen. We have to know how they attacked us, and we have to show the American public that we were proper attacked, that this was a Russian, that Trump was a hand grenade thrown into our body politic, and we have to bring that out into the light. And then what we do with that, I don't know, because Russia is going to be in a lot of trouble very soon.
Right.
And
this kind of
maybe not pile on, but
and the amount of the kind of fuck around that they are doing in our system is cheap.
Currently.
It's cheap, and it's going to get cheaper because cyber attacks, and especially media-based cyber attacks, fake videos, fake posts, fake newspapers, all that kind of stuff, is going to get cheaper and cheaper and easier to do. Now, that will also harden Americans and others against that kind of stuff, because we won't believe anything. The problem is, here's another example of right about the time we're going to have a big reckoning about this, nobody believes anything. This also is a way of they're going to try to take advantage
and that is. Yeah, and that's right out of Moscow's playbook as well, because Moscow, and again, I talked about this in last week's episode. I had on a guy by the name of Operator Starsky, who's a Ukrainian who combats Russian disinformation, and we talked about this at great length. And one of the things that I think we need to understand when we talk about Russian information warfare campaigns is they don't care about one narrative or the other. They're not trying to plant this story or that story. They're trying to cause chaos and uncertainty in our reasoning and in everything that we do. And so that you're right. I mean, because they love the chaos, and so the chaos that potentially the AI, advances are going to be able to cause is something we need to be aware of, because they will use it against us. So, but I take this as very good news. I think right now, if I'm in the Kremlin, if I'm in Putin's circle, I would be seriously looking at how to hide and run. And shoring up my
working on your bug
Swiss
out plan,
bank accounts, and looking at what little island off of Thailand or whatever I can move to. Or how the DPRK if you really have to, but they're screwed. They're really screwed.
Yeah.
If this goes the way it looks like it's going to go, and God, I certainly hope it will. They're in really big trouble, and they're not going to look. They can't sustain another 4 years of a unified West led by the United States. And Kamala will be welcomed with open arms by our NATO partners.
Yep.
For a variety of reasons, but she will be absolutely welcome with open arms, and they will remain unified against Moscow, and they can't go another 4 years. Hell, I mean, they've got just this week a number of ranking generals within the Ukrainian armed forces have come out and publicly said, we think the Russians have about another month and a half of in them. In which they can conduct offensive operations. It doesn't mean that they're going to fall apart and retreat. Doesn't mean this, that, or the other thing. But they're saying, judging by the attrition, they've got about another month and a half where they can attack us. So if I'm Ukrainian and I'm in the Ukrainian military leadership, I just hold the line. I just let them crash against the line, let them, burn themselves out. And also all the while knowing that, if indeed there's a new, pro-Ukrainian administration in the White House that's going to be there for another 4 years, all you got to do is hold the territory you have now, and then, we'll see where things go. Whether or not there's territory that is relinquished in a negotiated settlement, or whether or not, the Russian forces do start to really attrit, and you can maybe take back some land. And obviously, still the F-16s for some reason or another are still not in the air. I have some speculation on that, but this is
the other
this
thing too
week
is
has
I don't
been
know.
really bad for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, it has, and I don't know that they're not. I think there was been a lot of footage that I keep seeing about them pushing back on the Russian Air Force.
Yeah, I don't
in
think
particular.
they're here yet.
Okay, because somebody's shooting them down.
I really don't think they're here yet.
Somebody is shooting them
I
down
know-
from the air. The Russian planes, not the
Well,
F-16s.
There's a couple of Su-35s went down, and I'm trying to think of what else came down. I don't know. Is that it's possible? Look, you could be right, but what I have been told here on the ground by contacts that I have in the Ukrainian military is that when the F-16s are in the air, we're going to know it. It's not going to be deniable. It's not going to be like, well, what's causing that?
Right.
It's going to be shock and awe. Is the intent. Now that may have changed, because the guy that I spoke to, and now I can kind of openly talk about this, because actually the window he gave me has come and gone for when I spoke to him about almost 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, and he gave me a window, and that window has come and gone. And this is a guy I trust, who has never steered me wrong. He has been right several times in the last, since Maidan. So, 2014 is when I first made contact with him, and he has risen through the ranks of the Ukrainian military to a very powerful position.
Right.
And he would know. And he said to me that the intent was not to kind of disperse the F-16s and kind of like hit on, a little bit here and a little bit there and this, that, and kind of eke them out as they did with like the HIMARS or the ATACMS, or even like the Leopard tanks or what have you. That the intent was to like hit them real hard in a massive kind of, sortie attack of, at least a squadron, if not two, of these F-16s. So something has changed. I suspect it has something to do with where to put them, because that's a big issue. Because any airfield that is modified to accommodate the F-16s will just become a magnet for Russian attacks. So we shall see. Although you also could be right in that, because that's what the F-16 excels at, is air to air.
Right.
Although it's multi-use. So we shall see.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff to cover. Obviously, this is from the Guardian. Alexander Syrsky. That's the
Syrsky interview with Luke.
Yeah,
that's his interview with Luke Harding.
Yeah,
who I should actually get in the studio sometime. Luke is a great guy. He's a very good journalist.
His response was, and this is the big quote, I guess the takeaway from it is, I know we will win, and how. How. But
Syrsky is an interesting dude.
Yeah. So he was specifically saying he knows they've got a plan to win this, and they're watching, and this may play into what you were talking about them watching the Russians crash against the line and then fall back and then do it again, and then that kind of stuff. That he may be watching that happen, and then the F-16s come, because again, you don't want to waste any of those. You want to the irony that the Russians have lost the Black Sea. They have lost Sevastopol. They cannot launch ships from it. Whether there are subs in the area or not is maybe open for debate, but it doesn't look like it. Most of their subs are, floating around the rest of the world, intimidating their friends. So the idea that they have one off the coast of Odessa or something, is it a possibility? Sure. Is it a probability? No. Because if they lose one of those, because they're trackable, because they make a lot of noise, and because the only ones that would be there are the diesel ones, because of the depth of the water and the size of where they can come and go in there. I just don't see that as playing a major factor. So if they lost that, if they lose the air next, which is entirely possible.
Yep.
What else is there? Because they certainly are not
so screwed.
doing it well on the ground.
So
yeah.
No, he's done. And look, we've talked about this before, but I'll just reiterate it again. You have to understand the importance of the Black Sea to Russia. I mean, a warm water port was something that Peter the Great in like 1720 set as a Russian, priority. That this was a national, priority. We need to get a warm water port because Peter had traveled around Europe and he saw the importance of a strong navy in Britain and in Holland in particular. And he said, in order to compete with these other empires, we have to have a warm water port and a strong navy too.
Right.
Follow that up a couple of decades later with Catherine the Great, who takes as the Ottoman Empire retreats, she takes that territory. She takes Crimea. She builds Odessa, and then take into account the very long-held aspiration for Moscow to be what they call the third Rome. So after Rome goes Constantinople. Constantinople falls to the Ottomans. The Ottomans overexpand and then they retract. The Russians come flooding in, and they hope to eventually control the Bosphorus and in so doing become what they call the third Rome. Those are three pillars of Russian identity. Okay, the dream of Peter, the conquests of Catherine, and the aspiration to the third Rome.
Yeah.
All three of those pillars of Russian geopolitical aspirations and design go on with one sitting czar in the Kremlin. Nobody survives that.
Yeah.
Nobody. No Russian leader survives losing all three of those things. And in one fell swoop, it's going to happen. So whatever happens with this war, because Russia is not going to take Odessa. It's just not going to happen. I've been to Odessa several times during this war. Place is a fortress. They don't have the means. They do not have the means to take Odessa. Putin's living on borrowed time. He's absolutely his only hope was to get Trump back in for another term, and that ain't going to happen.
By the way, I would like to say that I don't know if you're maybe it's because you're ahead of us on the time scale or something like that, but apparently the Ukrainians know something we don't. Vance will give up Ukraine in favor of Russia, says Harris's vice presidential candidate. They're talking about Mark Kelly. This is
Is that the Kiev Post?
Yes, Kiev Post.
Oh, bless their hearts.
No, I think it's VETH. I don't know what that is. Oleg Devagora.
RBTH. Is it RBTH?
VETH.
It's Russia behind Russia. Oh, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, bless their hearts, but they're a little they're getting over a little bit over their skis.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I hope it is Kelly. I love the idea of Kelly.
Me
I love
too.
the idea of picking up Arizona.
Yeah.
I don't think Whitmer. I want Whitmer. Look, as a Michigander, I'm both a San Franciscan, a Michigander, a Londoner, and now a Kievan.
Yeah.
I wear a lot of hats.
Yes, you do.
But as a Michigander, I want Whitmer in Lansing.
Yes.
Not only that, fuck that Buckeye. Vance is a Buckeye. He can. We don't take kindly to Buckeyes in Michigan.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and also
and his whole thing about being a Marine. Okay, look, I tread carefully here because I've known a lot of public affairs officers in my time.
Yeah.
I used to liaise with the U.S. military. I used to go outside the wire with some very brave public affairs guys running around with a camera instead of an M4. All right, bless them. I want to know what kind of public affairs. I don't care because he's never going to get my vote, as I explained. But I want to know what kind of Marine Vance was, because I get the distinct impression he's what we used to call a fobbit. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
A fobbit. So a fob is a forward operating base.
Yeah.
In Iraq and Afghanistan, we used to have a system of forward operating bases. It's called fobs.
Yeah.
And the people who never went outside the wire, which are actually the guys who used to go out into, Afghanistan or Iraq, out into the kind of wild kind of environment, was actually a very small percentage. A lot of our military never left their bases because a lot of what they did was satellite imagery, was targeting, was logistics, support.
Right.
So the guys who stayed inside the wire were also kind of often derisively referred to by the guys who went outside the wire and did, the door kicking and the snake eating, as it was referred to, were derisively called fobbits. So I want to know if Vance was a fobbit.
Yeah, well, I again, one of the signs might be how little we're hearing about his service. You know what I mean? Because believe me, if there was a lot of stories to tell, if there was a single
he was
door
dodging
kick,
IEDs.
Yeah, if there was a single door kick or a single drive through a dangerous area, we'd have heard about it already. It'd have been in his fucking speech and in his lead-in video, and
he was writing for the Army Times. He was writing for Stars and Stripes. He was writing for the Army or the Marine Times.
Meanwhile,
he was sitting behind a keyboard.
Also,
look, I have a really
still you're in
love for our men and women in uniform. Yes. And he was
you're
over
in
there.
The danger zone. That's totally fine.
You're in the danger zone. You're overseas. You're away from your family. You're in really difficult, harsh circumstances. I'm being slightly facetious with the whole fobbit thing.
Right.
Because everybody was involved. But at the same time, you can't also kind of, without showing your work,
you can't steal valor from people who are outside the line.
I was a snake eater.
Right. Yeah. You can't allow that lie to be carried respectfully with your permission, with your just tacitly allowing that belief to linger, because that in and of itself is gross. And again, and I think anybody will tell you, the people in the motor pool, the people who service the airplanes, the people who service the guns and all that kind of stuff are as valuable as the people in the front line because they can't do their job without 100%. Them. That's absolutely important. And so they are heroes and they should be thanked for their service in the same instance. There's nothing, there's no shame in that. Until you go, I fought on the front lines and you're like, you were in the motor pool. Then it becomes weird. I should look up some of my old Marine Corps public affairs officer buddies from Iraq or Afghanistan. See if anybody knew them. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, right. So this article that you're referencing here, is this still the Kelly? This is still the Kelly thing, and I wanted to put this up there. As ranking member of the Senate Arms Services Committee and a former Navy pilot, Kelly's been a vocal defender of Ukraine and has been hands-on in training Ukrainian F-16 pilots at Davis Monthan Air Force Base in his home state. Vance, a Marine Corps veteran, has been a vocal opponent of aid to Ukraine, saying it prolongs a bloody war that Kyiv cannot win, which is a Russian talking point that we've heard from Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's one of like 6 people who are stupid enough to say this shit, and it fits in with his attitude towards women that he would go, look, rape is God's gift to a woman who doesn't have kids yet, and she should just lay there and take it. That is Vance's attitude about a lot of things. Fuck that dude. And that's as directly as I can put his attitude towards the Ukrainian people. And the difference is again,
Kelly is over there watched training that damn movie, Ron Howard's movie. And, boy is right.
So this is a crucial part of everything. There was one other question, and this is, I don't know if this applies to again. We can never tell, but this lovely lady right here. Hold on. I don't know if you know the story of this.
No.
Top Russian economist dies after falling out of
The
window.
accountant.
Yeah. Valentina
82.
Bondarenko, a top Russian economist, has died at the age of 82 after falling out of her apartment window in Moscow, Russian state-run media reported on Tuesday. Bondarenko, a leading research fellow at the Institute of Economics of Russia Academy of Sciences in Moscow, fell out of her apartment window on Monday evening, emergency services told news agency TASS. She fell out of the window of her apartment. Unfortunately, it was not possible to save her. The injuries she received were incompatible with life. That's how they stated over there. It's so weird. That's the language on it. Yeah. She accidentally fell out of her window. Now, her job as an accountant was besides she worked at, a research fellow at the Institute of Economics, she was also one of the big auditors for the military.
Yes.
So one of her jobs was to check how money was spent in the military, and if the taxes taken from people was actually going where it was supposed to go. And wouldn't you know it? So,
82.
Yeah, 82 years old.
No, they don't discriminate by age.
Nope. Or sex,
disgusting.
It's
disgusting.
Yep. It's super weird.
Disgusting.
Mm-hmm. So
the sooner that regime falls, the better. Really, seriously.
Agreed. I see.
And it is coming. It is coming. When if we can just get across the finish line with Kamala and put Trump in our rearview mirror.
Yeah,
it's this war will be. You were absolutely right to make the point about how different the conflict in Gaza is to the conflict here, and also to point out the Russian talking point. This war is 100% winnable by the West.
Yeah,
100%. All we need to do is have the resolve to give the Ukrainians the weapons and take the training wheels off from the weapons that we give them. Mm-hmm. And they will do it. They will win this war. I don't know what it'll look like. I don't know if they get Crimea back. I don't know if they get Mariupol back. I don't know if they break the land bridge so that Crimea can never be properly sustained by Russia and potentially pose a threat. But they lose. The Russians lose this war if we don't lose our resolve.
Yeah.
And imminently so. Imminently so. All we have to do is not let, Putin stooges or useful idiots or fellow travelers or whatever it is get back into the White House. So let's get Harris and whomever. Yes, 100%.
So
let's put Ben Hodges in as sec def. It's not going to happen.
Right, but yeah. Here's what I'll say. There was I was just looking it up because I was curious during this part. There was the Slavyanin, which was a Russian sub, was sunk in the Sea of Azov, or damaged and had to withdraw, whatever. And since then, that was the tipping point for them losing the Black Sea and moving everybody out of there. Yes. And they have not, insofar as we know, put another sub in the area to have the same thing happen to it. Because, again, if you're going to use it as if you're going to park it there and fire into the country from it, you're going to show where it is. If you're going to surface and be able to look at, something, using the periscope or any of the sensors on it, you're going to have to come to the surface and then you can spot it. Like submarines are almost completely useless in this, except for, I guess, fire and flee.
And think about when they have air dominance.
Right.
When Ukraine has at least over their over their territorial airspace, if they start having F-16s that can loiter and work in conjunction with other air assets, including drones. They're not going to be surfacing a sub.
No,
and that means they've already lost the Black Sea.
Yeah,
but
they
that
lost
will
it in
just
March.
Drive it home. Yeah, they really did. When they started moving the Black Sea fleet to Novorossiysk on the eastern shore of the Black Sea, it was over.
Yep.
And it just hasn't filtered down to the Russian people yet. I think it's going to at some point. There's a lot of things that are fraying at the edges of Russian society, but they control their information very tightly, and I don't think many Russians are either informed or they're in denial about the fact that they've lost the Black Sea.
The biggest Chinese export they use is news control.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
they learned a lot from the Chinese about how to control the information flow, but they're at some point it's going to be undeniable, and when they recognize that they have lost the Black Sea, and that they no longer have dominion over the Black Sea, even if they don't consider it lost, they don't have total dominion, which is basically the same thing, because you all got to go through the Bosphorus. Yeah. Then they're going to freak out.
Yeah.
And also, they still think they can take Odessa. They're that deluded that they still think
that news is still floating around over there, because it seems like that
is
no pun intended, that ship has sailed.
Oh yeah. Physically, they do not have they don't have the sheer manpower to take Odessa. It is, barricade upon barricade upon, fighting trench line, They can't. And that would also mean, by the way, they have to go through Kherson. Kherson's defenses have been strongly reinforced. So they would lose massive. I mean, look, they lose tens of thousands of men taking 20 miles. They would have to go like 200-300 miles. More than that. I mean, I'd have to get out a map and do the exact measurement. Right. But from Kherson to Odessa, what is that? About a 4-hour drive, 5-hour drive, maybe. And it would be disastrous. They'd have to go through Kherson, by the way, because you can't just leave that in your rear. So they're going to have to fight across the river, take Kherson, keep going, taking little villages as you go. They're slow, massive attrition. That's before you even get to Odessa. Now, as I've explained, when it becomes painfully obvious to the Russian people that they've lost Odessa, which Catherine, I did a vlog about it a year and a half ago. No Russian leader survives losing what Catherine built. It's just tick-tock, baby. And thank God we're going to win the U.S. election, because that was the only way that Russia
would get a toehold. Yeah.
Yeah, even a marginal hope of winning this war. And if, let's not jinx it, but I am very confident we take the White House.
Yeah.
And
retain that we retain the White House.
Also, we retain. Sorry.
Yeah, yes. And also I would argue that that Biden has set up a sort of a fail-safe, anyways, over the last year, especially with the $60 billion that was added, and the Lend-Lease and a couple of other things, where Russia can't win this in the next year. They don't have the resources to do it if the fighting continues. And the question, that was affecting Ukraine the most was they were running out of resources earlier this year. Now that they've been re-upped and that NATO is also, backfilling it as well, they have enough stuff to fight for another year, even still. And on top of that, continued supplies from us and other people that will add even on top of that. Even if Trump got in, he wouldn't be able to. He could tell them to stop fighting, and they tell him to fuck off.
Yeah, I was just going to say there is no loss in the will to fight here.
Right.
There are some growing calls to get into negotiations, and that would ultimately probably mean ceding some territory. which is also, by the way, there's a huge contingent here that will not accept that.
Right.
So pardon me, even if Biden, or even if whoever took the Oval, or whoever was in the Oval said, stop fighting, and Ukraine didn't want to do it, they would not stop fighting because, again, and we've talked about this so many times, but it's worth repeating. This has been a colony of various empires throughout its history. And they have decided that they are not just going to swap one imperial master for another. And they've shown it many times. There's an article apparently in the New York Times today about a phone call between SecDef Austin and his Russian counterpart, Belosov, who apparently called him up and said, "Look, we have intel that the Ukrainians are about to do something, and it's not disclosed in the article. Get on the blower to your guys in Kiev and tell them if they're even thinking about doing X, that they shouldn't do it." And apparently Austin did do it, and he did it in no small part because there have been instances, and not rare, not infrequent instances, where Kiev has just said, we're doing this, and we're not going to tell you because we're a sovereign country. Thank you for the weapons.
Right.
We appreciate it. We understand the restrictions that you have given us, but outside of those restrictions, we're going to do this, and we don't necessarily feel that we have to. And you know what? They're a sovereign state. We didn't buy these people with those weapons. We may have common cause, but this is a sovereign country, and Brussels better learn that lesson too. So,
here's one of the other aspects, and I don't know that anybody's really considering this, and I hate being first and right all the time, but it happens. Is that if there's a situation, I think that Ukraine is showing restraint in how they use some stuff out of respect for the U.S. and to continue building their relationship with the U.S. so that doesn't stop the flow of weapons. If Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were to take the White House in November, there is no reason why the Ukrainians should hold back at all, because they know that winning through attrition is now more important than ever, and that they should, if they're going to get everything they've got from the United States, they might as well spend it inside Russia. They might as well fly stuff deep within the country, destroy as much of the infrastructure of Russia as possible, and really strike at the heart of the Kremlin. I mean, it would behoove them to go after the Kremlin almost entirely if they've got, fuck it, the U.S. isn't going to back us, so why would we hold back? We're only doing that out of respect for the continued flow of support. If you tell us the support,
keep a good relationship,
right? If you're going to tell us the 100%. Support is cut off, then fuck it, we're going for broke, because if we don't now, you're not going to be there to have our back if we continue to do this kind of like chip away fighting, right? So there is no reason why they don't just.
The Europeans are waking up to that too,
right?
A lot of European countries, the Brits in particular, have said, you know what, we're gonna loosen these restrictions,
right? But even still,
and I think if
all bets are off, if Ukraine feels like Trump and Vance are going to be in charge of shit, and again, they may, even if they won, which they're not going to do, but even if they won the election in November, they wouldn't take over till January. That's a long fucking time for Ukraine to go, all right, all bets are off. They're not going to help us. So we gotta put an end to this. We got to bring this to a close. Even if it gets ugly, it's going to be ugly. It's just a matter of time scale. Do we want 6 months of, do we want, 6 years of death to happen in 3 months to stop this? Because this will go on and on and on, and they will just own us. They'll destroy us if Trump has his way. Right?
Yeah, 100%. And as I said, the Europeans are waking up to it as well. They would no doubt, I think accelerate lifting those restrictions. yeah, look, I'm being cautious. We're being cautious because God forbid he does, Trump gets back in the Oval. But if he does get back in the Oval, there are still things that Ukraine can do before he assumes the office.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think they would do it. Ukraine wants to be a good partner, ally, and friend to the United States. There's a lot of pro-American sentiment in this country. It is palpable. They really love America, and they want to be like America in a lot of ways. I mentioned this before, is that I think they want a system that is more akin to our congressional system than a traditional European parliamentary system. They really like America here, so they want to keep ties very good.
Yep.
But if you get in a puppet like Trump, Putin's puppet Trump,
they won't hold it against us, but they're not going to hold back, nor should they.
They're not going to sacrifice themselves.
Yeah, as we're getting near the tail end of this, there's a couple of since we're about to elect our first female president in the United States, there are a couple of women-based stories out of Ukraine that I think are kind of crucial. One of them is, and I don't want to get her name wrong, there's a Russian woman who was killed. She was shot by Ilya.
The nationalist. Yeah, yes. She was a hardcore Ukrainian nationalist who advocated for making Ukrainian the only language in the country that would be acceptable. She was a bit of a whack job.
Right, but she got murdered by an 18-year-old Russian sympathizer, or is that the assumption?
It looks like it. That's what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody who was pro.
Right.
Good ties with Moscow, keeping historic Russian colonization. I mean, look, hey, you had this happen in the Irish Revolution as well. I mean, there were Irish who said, no, let's stick with let's stick with the crown.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's here, and yes, obviously, also this woman was a bit. She's a little bit much for me.
Yeah.
But it's a democracy. It runs the gamut. Far right, far left, everything Russian gets thrown in the waste bin of history, or guys that say we still should be partners with our brothers in Moscow. All of these things are possible and represented here. The vast majority, however, have no love for Moscow, and the vast majority also recognize that a functioning democracy, you need to allow voices to be heard. The only time I have seen them shutting things down, like when they shut down the Russian church or certain Russian political parties, because those groups were not acting in good faith. They were puppets for Moscow, and they were fifth columnists, and that's what happened. But I got the Falun Gong. I walk past the Falun Gong on the street doing their meditations every day. They're not accosted. They're not disrupted because they are not working for Moscow. Plurality is something that Ukrainians understand very well because it's been used against them throughout their history, and they're moving away from it. It's going to be a new Ukraine. It's going to be a great partner and friend to the United States. It's going to be a great contributor to Europe and to global security, and a great new democracy as we look to the future in the United States and actualizing what it is that we say we are about. All are created. All men, all people are created equal, and have these. We have a brand new democracy here, and one that really genuinely will have to go through some birthing pains. And right now, the priority is winning the war. They want to be a democracy, a shining example of democracy. And I think it's exciting to me to see the possibility of us voting in a woman of color to the highest office in the land, and at the same time, we have a brand new, recently liberated colony that will take the reins of democracy in Europe and run with them. So, I am optimistic in so many different ways.
Well,
So,
you know, and again,
it's been a good week.
Yes, it does. Yes, it is, and it will continue to be so in that regard. There was another story, and we'll talk about this tomorrow on the radio. But
Sure.
also Kurmasheva, she's a Russian American journalist who was an editor for Radio Free Britain, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Europe. That's what it. Yeah, she was detained. Yeah. She was detained in Moscow or in no. Mm-hmm. Anyway, right. She was flying in. She was flying into Russia. I want to say it starts with a K. I don't know. Anyways, she was detained in Russia for
Leningrad, Ekaterinburg.
Yeah,
I don't
like
remember. But I know she's in Moscow now because she's in the dock.
Yes, she got 6. She was just sentenced 4 days ago to 6 years in jail for failing to register as a foreign agent and carrying a U.S. She was fined for having a U.S. passport she did not declare. She flew into the country because there was a family emergency just to see family, and then they arrested her, and then they charged her later for spreading false information about Russian troops because she edited a book that was saying no to the war 2 years ago. And now it looks like they're trying to sweeten the deal to get some people from the West, specifically that German murderer that's in the jail over there, to try and get that movement going. But Kurmasheva and Gershkovich are now both, U.S. journalists.
Well, yeah, and I'll just close myself, and I'm looking forward to talking to you on the radio tomorrow. So I'll get out my Tourette's. I'm making a joke. Don't get overexcited. I'll get all my fucks out right now. So fuck Russia, fuck Vance, fuck Trump, fuck all of them, fuck Putin. Right. They're all my fucks. I have no more fucks to give.
Yeah, right. These assholes.
But this week's episode. Yeah, if this is the future we want, fuck them. We're not going back. And we aren't going back to the brutality of Russia's empire. I'm not going to let them influence the world either, because that's what they want. Yeah. They want to destroy liberal democracy because Russia wants to reinstate the empire and just have, just standard operating procedure for despots and power and the relationship to power in the state as it has always been. So no, the American project will beat you. We will do. We will put a woman of color in the Oval. Hell yeah, let's go. I'm fired up.
Yep.
But let me just close with saying, you bring up Gershkovich and the RFE Radio Free Europe editor
Kurmasheva. Yeah,
having been thrown into prison. And it's interesting because I have just conducted an interview this week with the subject of our next episode's interview subject, Aidan Aslan, who is a British national, but he fights in the Ukrainian armed forces. He was captured during the fight for Mariupol at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. And I sat down with him this week, and we talked about what it's like to be inside a Russian prison and to be a POW, to be a prisoner of Russia. And it is harrowing. So we got to get Gershkovich out of there. We got to get this woman out of there. We got to get all of our, American citizens that are sitting in Russian prisons. Get them out of there, because Russia's penal system
it's going to fall. And my problem is that when it falls, it's going to look like a Taliban fucking jail. Everybody's just going to, somebody's going to unlock all the doors and everybody's fucking dead. So especially anybody, it's not going to be safe at all. Yeah, if you're British, American or linked with American or British or any of that stuff, you're going to die. So any trade we can give for them right now ultimately will benefit us, because we can get our citizens and European citizens out of there before this place collapses in on itself. Even the people that we trade for them are going to end up hoisted by their own petard or falling out a fucking window. So I'm not worried about who they get, because that person's not going to be able to travel freely in the world ever again. If they're caught in Kazakhstan, they'll get killed.
You're part of the regime.
Europe. Yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
So, we have to start.
Look forward to this. This week's episode is really good.
Yeah. And appreciate it, brother.
Check out. It's good. It's really insightful, and we'll talk tomorrow on the radio, absolutely, where I can't sweat.
That's right. So watch the fucking episode this Sunday.
Buckeyes.
It's a
Screw you,
fucking
Vance.
great. It's a fucking great episode. You get to see it if you fucking watch it on fucking Sunday. So I'll just say it. It's called fucking On the Edge. Is the fucking show, and fucking Philip fucking Ittner is
we
the
fucking
host,
love it.
and he's got some fucking great guests. Fucking shit. And
we're
so
gonna fucking win.
We're gonna fucking win.
If you're a despot, if you are anti-democratic, fuck you.
Fuck
should
you.
be shaking in your boot.
Exactly, and tomorrow we'll use all
Tide's
our nice.
coming. Tide's coming.
We'll use all our nice language tomorrow. We got it out of our system. I hope. Doesn't it feel good?
All right,
and watch
buddy.
Johnny swear on the air tomorrow. Watch, just
Great
watch.
news, man. This has been such a great week. You and I were both on pro Biden, and I still am.
Yeah.
I think that man was such a
Dude.
great president. But let's
Still
go,
is.
man.
Yep,
Let's
still
go.
is.
That Beyonce, freedom, baby. That Beyonce song. That's
great.
campaign commercial.
Yep,
Whoa,
absolutely.
that gets me fired up.
Oh, it's so good.
So I'm coming. I will be casting my ballot in person. So if I will see you in November,
Yes.
if not before, because
I
I'm
insist.
coming and I am putting my ballot in my Michigan
yes.
ballot box because I think we can take Michigan. I think
Damn
Michigan
straight.
can absolutely go pro-Harris.
Oh, I think we're leaning towards a big blue wave. I think Rovember still has doubled down,
too.
and I think
I do too.
the Democrats I think are underestimating even who's going to show up at this point, and maybe that's how they should. That's fine. That's how they should. They should act again.
And you can tell how
act like they're
scared
losing.
the other side is.
Oh yeah, and Trump
and you can see how scared the other side is. Russian and the
Trump
tankies.
is just
Taking in their
gonna
boots.
get worse. Glorious. So
Almost.
thanks so much, brother, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, buddy.
Okay.
All right. Of course
Have a
you
great
will.
one. Yeah,
Talk
be
to you
safe.
tomorrow.
All right, bye.
You too.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Philip Ittner on the edge is the show. Some people were asking what my shirt says. So for those of you that were not around when this came up, it says, "Your Getty scared my cat." It is a reference that happened on the show where I sang Geddy Lee at one point, and yes, and this showed up at one of our beloved chatters wrote that in the thing, so I made a T-shirt of it. So it's available on the Twitch store. So if you're on Twitch or if you go look at the Twitch store, the shirt is available. There you go. So I would argue this is I get dummy copies of these just to see if they wear okay and all that kind of stuff. These wash and shrink like crazy. And I would say I have to make a version of it with white lettering so it will work on black because obviously they don't make the distinction on the thing, so I have to fix that. But on the lighter colors, it works very well. It's good. So anyways, yeah. Living in the limelight, the universal... Yeah. Hold on. I don't want to scare anybody else's. So, chat room, thank you guys so much for being with me today. Take care. Yeah. And I will see you this afternoon. Yeah. When am I getting the sheepdog pack? Oh, well, I'm working on that. I'm see if I get an unlicensed picture of Cujo. How'd you know Rush toured with Kiss? Yes, I did. During the working man era. Yeah. Gene talking to Getty about like, you guys are never going to get laid with that music. And he was right. So yeah, ask them. But they were also Canadian, so they had that, against them. But then that all changed, I guess, with Nickelback and Default and Theory of a Dead Man. Well, I'm running back and forth from here to North Carolina, wishing you were here. I guess I should watch what I wish for. Boom, boom. Those guys really need to tune down. All right. Anyways, much love, and I will see you this afternoon. Okay. I have a button for this. I swear to God. Hit that like on your way out, everybody. I agree. Theory's a great group. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. Patreon.com/HalSparks. Don't forget, you can, if you've Venmo'd before, you can Venmo again. I should be in your history. So if you want to support the show, send me a cup of coffee. I gotta catch a flight this afternoon, so it will be a very tight show today. Damn it. Okay, bye.